Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Access Granted, your go to podcast where we rethink access in a modern cloud era. Today, I'm very thrilled to announce to welcome Thomas Rawley, who is head of US engineering at Britive and a chief cloud architect. Have decades of experience in the financial services space, and somebody that I highly rate in terms of his opinions and in terms of the modern trends that enterprises are seeing and what we can learn from those best practices. So, Thomas, welcome to the show. Really appreciate you joining and taking time talking to us today.
Thank you for having me on. Happy to be here.
Before we go into the serious stuff, right, I wanted to ask you a question. If you have to build a gadget and you have all sorts of resources available to you, what would be that one gadget that you will build that can help with everyday life that people can leverage?
Yeah, well, I am a gadget guy, so anything possible. So, I might go with like a real time universal translator,
Nice, nice.
all languages to all languages.
Okay, okay. All languages, yeah. That's all fantastic. So whether it's a human language, whether it's a programming language,
There you go. Yeah. I didn't even think about non-human languages. That'd be interesting. Yes.
I will be your first customer, Thomas.
All right. Let you know when it's ready.
Fantastic. So, as you know, we talk about this podcast, right? This is focusing on access, whether human and non-human, and we want to bring in specialists, experts, whether from customers or partners or evangelists, to talk about the modern trends that we are seeing, and as people are moving from data center world to a cloud dominated, cloud first world, there are a lot of things changing. The problems, definitions are different. Things that have worked wonderfully in the on-prem world now have to be relooked. And many customers that we are dealing with are in a phase of vendor reset. They are modernizing the cloud stack. Obviously, they want to simplify operations. They want to reduce costs. They want to be provide better agility for developers and simplify. I want to ask you is, maybe you can give a little bit background of being a customer on the other side, consuming the products and building products, and then what trends are you seeing as people are moving from your on-prem, data center world to the cloud? What trends are they seeing? What problems are facing, specifically when it comes to accessing workloads, application infrastructure, and data? So that would be a really great view for our audience.
Yeah, yeah. Happy to start with a background of me, and we can go from there, maybe. Again, Thomas Rawley here. Been at Britive going on 3 years, coming up shortly here. But I did come from a customer of Britive before they actually purchased Britive, and large financial services and payments industry. Spent the last, we'll say, 4 years of my time there in cloud, focused on cloud, standing up primarily AWS, but then we get Azure and Google, and the DBAs go by Oracle stuff, and so now we're in OCI. Setting up all the cloud foundations, cloud platform team, cloud center of excellence, different names depending on what company you're with, right? But setting that up from the ground up, right? Prior other tech and ops roles, worked for a large orange retailer before that, right out of school. So historically, I've been in the big enterprise space. Britive is my first entry into the startup world.
Fantastic, fantastic. So multi-cloud is actually a reality. It's not just a vendor speak. I remember that I used to work with a CSP, and about 2-3 years ago, they wouldn't even allow the word multi-cloud. If you are doing a webinar, if you're doing a podcast or anything marketing related with them, for them, one cloud or one public cloud is what customer needs. But looks like for coming from a customer and a practitioner point of view, multi-cloud is a reality. and I think we have to build our architecture and design. Would you agree with that?
I would, yeah, and I would also say, to clarify multi-cloud, right? I've had a former CTO that I worked for, when we were just starting our cloud journey, say, I want a dial on my desk that says when Amazon's pissing me off, I can move the dial and have all my traffic go to Azure. And then when Microsoft's pissing me off, I can go back and take the dial and make it go the other way, right? That would be great, right? But I'm not aware of anyone that can easily do that today, right? If you're out there, I'd love to talk to you about it. But multi-cloud is not necessarily I'm running my app high availability in multiple clouds, right? I have Azure for certain things, I have AWS for certain things, I have Google for certain things, right? Generally, what we see is non-overlapping workloads, right? Through acquisition, a company was AWS, but they got acquired by a company that was Azure. Well, now you're multi-cloud, right? Even though it's disparate, unique workloads per cloud.
Fantastic. Yep, that's where the currently the customers are building, and hope in the future it might change, but every cloud has their different niche, and they specialize in certain things, and customers wants to use best of breed no matter where they are without the bottleneck of technology, right? So they want to build this unified architecture, whether it's networking, whether it's security, whether it's access, simplified, unified and secure infrastructure that can help their developers and data scientists to get the best from different services that these provider provides, and give something magical to the market. So that's great. Now, in terms of access, specifically access, what are some of the trends that you are seeing, especially when you were a practitioner and now you are building products for customers to solve certain problems? What are the common trends that you see as they pivot from being on-prem to now having workloads in the cloud?
Yeah. So I like to equate it from an on-prem perspective. There's for cloud and on-prem, right? There's always a security boundary that we need to take into account. In the on-premise world, that's generally a firewall or mini firewalls, right? That's your perimeter. That's what you want to protect. You protect your network. You protect your on-prem systems. You have firewall rules, right? Requests, all that kind of stuff. In the cloud, you don't have that as much. Identity becomes that security perimeter. And so you need to start thinking about identity differently, right? If I have your credentials, then I am you, and I can do whatever you are able to do. So the shift we're starting to see is, how do I secure identity? And not necessarily just authentication, but authorization as well, right? I may know who you are, but what are you now allowed or not allowed to do? Historically, a lot of on-prem would be Active Directory. You go through some process to be added into an Active Directory group or a group of groups or some combination therein. And you have that access forever, right? Your login, username, and password in Active Directory grants you whatever permissions you have all the time, right? Standing access. And so the shift we're seeing is, how do we decouple authentication from authorization? The credentials you use to log into the cloud should grant you no access to the cloud until you, through a just-in-time, access request process, ask for permissions to do things, right? Make their credentials worthless. I think we've kind of, as an industry, we've solved the authentication problem. There's always going to be new things coming out, but passwordless and MFA and passkeys, and there'll be new iterations of those things. But I think we've beaten that one to death, right? Like there's only so much that end users are willing to do before they start pushing back, right? So however you want to authenticate your users, do so using whatever vendor you wish for that. And then, let's just make sure that we protect the authorization component and decouple those. That's where we're starting to see things moving.
That's fantastic. And I think, to me, I think back in the day, maybe 4 years ago, AWS actually came out with this concept of assumed roles and IAM, and the way they design things is they expose permissions, granular permissions that you can leverage to provide the access that you need to the resources just in time. And I think that basically, in a way, players like Britive and there may be others in the category have sort of given this new category of, I would say, cloud PAM anywhere.
Yeah.
So do this dynamic privilege access, permission grants and removal of those grants once the job is done, but do it in a way that this unified across the board for all the environments.
Right.
And that's where I think the power comes, where, as you mentioned, authentication and decouple that from authorization. So when you log in, or let's say if the passwords get stolen, secrets get stolen, which we have seen is the root cause of several breaches. Right? You probably
Yep.
put ChatGPT and say, okay, give me the list of all the breaches that has happened because of passwords and secrets being stolen. I think this is a much important need of the day, and this is probably a low hanging fruit from when you look about modernizing cybersecurity. This is a low hanging fruit in terms of what you can implement proactively with a proactive mindset, not reactively, but proactively make it part of your zero trust posture with this CPAM anywhere category. So I think it's great. And from the perspective of, let's say, if I am a customer, I'm a customer, I'm moving, I'm an architect, right? And as you said, you come from pretty significant large environments where people are moving their applications on a daily basis to any of the cloud providers. There's
Yep.
always a tendency, especially if you have a great talent in house, people who really know the cloud well. Maybe at least one cloud they know, or maybe different people know the different clouds individually. There's always
Right.
a tendency to build things instead of buying it, right? And this is human nature. What's your thought, right? Because there are dynamics in play. You have legacy vendors who are moving their legacy products, which has worked tremendously well in the on-prem world. They're moving into the cloud, hosting them in the cloud, and saying it's a cloud product now. And then you have this build mentality. So what are people thinking in terms of trends, right? Do they now at this stage are looking to build something that can help them with some of the more modern problems, or obviously there's a drawbacks. So what do you think about drawbacks of leveraging the old world products that have been moved in the cloud? What have you seen?
Yeah. This one hits home for me, right? Uh, I have built a tool like Britive, right? Just in time access into AWS, right? Very proud of the tool that me and the team built. Uh, Multi-region, active, auto failover, the whole 9 yards, right? And it worked really well. Um, but then Azure comes along, and then Oracle and Google. And now I have to be an identity expert in every one of those cloud providers, right? Um, Throw on Snowflake, Salesforce, ServiceNow, right? Um, there's only so much one person or one team can do, right? Um, so, I built this tool before really, we looked in the market before anything existed. Okay, we'll build it ourselves. A couple of years later, when Azure, Google, Oracle come into play, um, well, does it make sense to continue to bolt on, or should we look in the market and see if there's something there? Of course, the rest is history. That tool has since been retired from. So I'm told. I don't have access to it anymore, but it's been retired from a just-in-time perspective. They still use it as a developer portal. Um, but those kind of decisions you got to make, right? Like, when it's one cloud, it's easier, right? When it's multi-cloud, it's a lot harder to. How do you bring all of those different and disparate IAM systems together in a cohesive, easy to consume way? And then what happens when it breaks at 3 a.m. during an outage and no one can get into the cloud to fix anything? All right, now you need follow the sun support, right? And future enhancements. And oh, by the way, OCI changed their entire identity model. Now you got to go fix that, right? There's always going to be things, right? And so ultimately, we decided that it wasn't worth it long term, and retired it in favor of Britive.
That's great insights. Yeah, and I think this multi-cloud abstraction, right, is the new normal now, and obviously each cloud provider build the product their own way. Everybody build differently. They solve things to some extent for their own environments, but enterprises, all of them are now multi-cloud enterprises, right? So it's up to the ISVs or independent software vendors to fix this problem for our customers, where they think about how it will be used and solve it in an architectural way, right? Not a reactive way, in a more proactive way. And this is where I think the vendors needs to look at where the industry is today, where they're heading, what the customers' problem space is, what they're trying to bring to the market, which actually needs, even if you're using something for 5%, you cannot, you still have to build the architecture the right way, right? So people are using OCI Exadata, right? Or GCP Analytics. Azure, they're using their own BI tools. AWS is good for many things. So having that architecture is critical, and this is where I think the modern vendors are creating that magic and simplicity. And obviously, it all boils down to, as you said, cost savings and support from a commercial company, future proofing it, because innovation is coming from these providers almost in a monthly basis. So how do you keep up with that, right? So it's better to, in a way, in some cases, I think build is good in a way to educate yourself. What problem are we solving? Make you a better educated decision maker. Even if you take a decision of buying a technology, at some point you say, okay, what's good for the business, right? And you said that, is it, about becoming an expert on 4 different clouds, and or should I build focus on building something magical for my end users, right, that I can give to the market. So I think this is a great insight. Now, from the perspective of these days, right, there's a lot of cloud washing. Every vendor, they see that business is going to the cloud, and they're saying, okay, and then it's sometimes it's an incumbent's dilemma, right? They have thousands of people working on the product. There's a gravity pulling them to continue what they have, right? And but at minimum, what they do is, they move whatever they have, they virtualize and they move it into cloud. Now, what are some of the pros and cons that you have seen in terms of leveraging or taking an approach where you're using an on-prem build solution that has been moved to the cloud versus for looking for a more modern, cloud innovative, cloud first solution?
Yeah. I'd say, we've seen some vendors out there, right? We have a cloud offering now. Just go install these 8 on-prem servers, right? Like, no, this just doesn't make sense, right? You can add cloud to, the front of your product name. That doesn't mean it's cloud, right? You might be running something in the cloud, but it's not cloud native, right? You're still using a lot of the old on-prem, methodologies for how you gain access. You're not deeply integrating into the various IAM platforms that then give afford you, future opportunity to customize and and build out what you want, right? So I would say, like the first things for me from a vendor perspective is show me, right? Show me how it works. I don't want to take your word for it. I don't want 50 PowerPoint slides. Just log on, show me, right? Is this easy or is this hard? In AWS, is this, I'm not going into the holy war of IAC tool choice, right? But is this as easy as a CloudFormation template, right? Or a Terraform apply? Or do I have to go click, 1,800 things and some, poor UI to make work, right? So just show me how easy it is. And, I think you'll very quickly see that some will be easier than others.
Fantastic. And from let's say if I am a business decision maker, right? I'm not a technology person. I'm a business decision maker. Obviously, I'm coming from on-prem where I have decades of worth of relationship with incumbents, legacy, well-known vendors, and now I'm moving to the cloud. So for me, I'm thinking that yeah, they have a cloud offering as well. I can just tap into it. So from a business perspective, what are some of the two or three things I should look for and ask? When you exchange your views with the your technical specialist, right? What are some of the things that you should look for that help you differentiate? That are you a true cloud smart, cloud first, cloud native vendor versus a on-prem moving to the cloud, because you will have some business inefficiencies that you will be signing up for if you don't evaluate this upfront.
Yeah, I'd say how well does it integrate with the native tools that your teams use today? We'll take like AWS CLI as an example, right? Can I get what I need as a developer on the AWS CLI in a terminal window without ever going to click a bunch of buttons, right? Can I get the credentials I need just in time using the tools I already use? Don't make me go do something else, right? How native is that feel? Or is it natively integrated? Is it a UI only and you got to go copy paste things? Does the product meet your development team where they like to work, wherever that might be, right? Whatever tools they might want to use, right? Kubernetes and kubectl is another great example, right? Kubernetes, very popular right now. Do I have to go do something else to get credentials for Kubernetes, or can I just run kubectl and magically behind the scenes everything gets provisioned for me when I need it and taken away when I don't, right? I think that'll be eye opening, right? That's hard for some of these legacy guys to do, I think. So that would be a kind of a key thing to look for, and then just I've just kind of scrolled through documentation in the past, and it's very clear, right, that this was a bolt-on effort, right? An AWS example, hey, give me this IAM user key. Well, IAM users are bad in AWS, right? Well, that's what we need in order to make it work. Well, then you're not really cloud native, are you? So scroll through, it requires a level of expertise in that cloud provider to understand if what you're being told is the right way or the wrong way of doing it. But, take a look at, online forums, Reddit, right? Huge AWS, Azure, Google subreddits there, that very knowledgeable folks hang out in, ask questions, right?
That's great. And I think you brought up a good point, right? That obviously leveraging and reading documentation, asking questions, seeing the product, how closely integrated it's with cloud concepts, cloud constructs that they have. And I think and I would love to hear your comment, but another aspect of being cloud smart, right? Leveraging cloud native constructs, but building on top of it, especially in a multi-cloud abstracted way, it directly results in cost optimizations, right? Because not only from a product perspective, because obviously most of these solutions are SaaS, true SaaS platforms, not really hosted per customer. So the less, I would say, cost required from a human capital perspective, managing them. Second is your skill set, right? So you don't have to have army of people to manage different pieces or fragmented approach, where everybody is leveraging and supporting, and it's a never ending thing, right? Because you build it, now you have to support it throughout the rest of your life, right? Until that thing is active and people are using it. So cost becomes a great driver for business people, especially if they go with the cloud first product. Is that your experience as well?
It depends. I mean, the cloud can be more costly, right? If you do a straight lift and shift from your on-prem world to the cloud, it's likely to be more expensive, right? Um, dollar for dollar, server for server, than your on-prem world, right? But that's not what the cloud was built for, right? Maybe you need to lift and shift to just get off of the data center, right? Maybe it's closing, but then you need to really start re-architecting and modernizing and using all of the cloud native constructs available to you to make it less costly, auto scaling, serverless, other things like that, right? Um, you know, in the cloud, you can spin up and spin down very quickly. Like a server could take, 3 months, 6 months to provision for you on prem. So you're gonna hug that server. That server is your friend. You're not gonna want to ever let it go, and you're gonna over provision it because in 3 years, your traffic patterns might be different. But in the cloud, start small. You can spin up a server in 3 seconds, 6 seconds, right? And it can go away 28 minutes later when you don't need it anymore, right? You don't care about that server anymore. So, from a cost perspective, yeah, obviously, everyone wants to reduce costs. But that's not the only factor, I guess, right? In the cloud, it's speed as well.
That's great. That's great. Coming back to what you were saying about cloud native, being cloud native, every infrastructure, the infrastructure that we are building is to support the users, the developers, the application team, the database team, the data scientists. So from the perspective of developer efficiency, right, what would you recommend specifically to the vendors, right, that who are trying to build a solution or a product to solve a problem? How much important it is to ensure that developer efficiency is not getting impacted? We have seen that there's a lack of adoption. The key reason sometimes would be is that it's not built to make life easier for developer. It's adding more steps. So something from your background that you want to share with the audience.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I think a lot of the time security tools are deployed without any regard for how that's going to impact the end users that have to use those tools. I would say, as a whole, developers, everybody really, they want to do the right thing. Nobody wants to put keys out in a public GitHub repo, right? There was a mistake, it happened. No one wants to do those things. So just make it easy to do the right thing. Ultimately, everyone's got a job to do, and they're getting paid to deliver whatever it is. And if you're in their way, they're going to find a way around you. Make it easy for them to do what you want, right? Integrate natively with the tools they use. Make it easy to request access. The process was, it took 3 weeks and 3 IT service requests and, whatever, because the first one wasn't filled out perfectly. So, you just lost 3 weeks of time. Well, hey, my friend over there gave me the admin credential 6 months ago. I'm pulling that out and using it because I still got to deliver this thing, right? But by the way, that admin credential shouldn't be admin until you come and check it out and elevate the permissions, but that's not how it works, right? So, I would say from a developer efficiency and, keeping developers, not just developers, any end users, right, of this, system, just make it easy to do the right thing.
Yeah. No, I think you touched on a great point in terms of, that's how the over provision privileges come into play, right? Where, it's a necessity. You need to get things done. You're under pressure. There's a timeline issue. And you just say, okay, I'll add this additional, privilege to your account. And now it was never removed. And that basically becomes a cause of a lot of breaches, right? Whether it's a human or service account or, any other, non-human user identities, over provision standing static privileges becomes a key reason for several breaches. So finding that balance, right, where you are providing a modern way of securing the access, but at the same time not blocking the developers or database scientists from their day-to-day work and making it efficient for them. And that's why I think I love this Britive capability that you guys have developed. I've seen Maybe a quick word on what Britive do for developers and data scientists.
Yeah, sure. So Britive is our purely Python built CLI that can do anything our SDK can do, anything our UI can do. You can do through the CLI, or if you want to write a Python script, you can use our SDK for it as well, right? So it runs natively in your terminal. There is a pop up once a day, right? You got to go authenticate. If you use Ping or Azure AD or Okta or whatever, like you got to go do that, and we need to know who you are. There's really no way around that. But that's a once a day thing. Then you're good, right? So we integrate natively with the CLI for AWS. We integrate natively with Kubernetes. If you're trying to check out Google or Azure Access, we'll create temporary service accounts or service principals for you and log in under that context so you can use those CLIs. Really just try to make it very easy. Integrate natively with SSH. So if you want to SSH to a server, you can run a Britive command beforehand inside of your SSH config that will check out the access you need to that server and present that private key just in time, right? So the goal is, the goal really of Britive is to offer a CLI, but we can go further than that. And how do we integrate it natively into the tools people use?
Fantastic, fantastic. It's power of programmable infrastructure. I think it's magical for the developers and data scientists to leverage the Britive. Thomas, really appreciate you joining and sharing your wisdom with us. I would want to ask you for sharing at least two key takeaways or two lessons learned that you want to share with the audience.
Yeah. So, number one, right? Take time to architect your cloud environments correctly the first time, right? At the very beginning. It's very hard to change once it's done. Correctly can mean different things to different people. For me, that means creating multiple AWS accounts, multiple Azure subscriptions, multiple Google projects, multiple OCI compartments, right? And dedicating them to teams or applications. Then you can start simplifying your access patterns. Okay, if I have 100 AWS accounts, one per application in my company or one per development team or however you want to think about it, then, well, I'm granting admin for somebody, but it's on 1/100th of my entire infrastructure because they only have access to that one AWS account or that one Azure subscription, right? So yeah, you own that. You own the bill. You go ahead and be admin. If you break yourself, that's on you, right? You can't hurt anybody else because we've isolated it. We've created the landing zones correctly from a billing boundary perspective, a network boundary, a security boundary, an identity boundary. That also increases developer efficiency, right? Be admin, right? In your AWS account, in your Azure subscription, do what you want. But if you break it, you own it, right? And you can't go break other people. And there's obviously some central accounts, networking, right? DNS, all that kind of stuff that you don't want everyone accessing. So those teams have a little more responsibility there. But architect your cloud environments in a way that makes it easy to grow and easy to manage access, right? Then if you have one AWS account or one Azure subscription, you're starting to have to handcraft custom policies and permissions to say, well, I can access these 12 things, but not these other 83, right? That becomes unmanageable immediately, right? So start thinking about how you want to architect your environments to make it easy to grant access and charge back the bill, right? All that kind of stuff. Number two, a lot of people, a lot of companies say they're single cloud. We're just AWS. We don't need, we got Identity Center, right? We don't need anything else. That very well may be true, but I like to say, or ask, how's Amazon Workmail going for you? How's Amazon Docs going for you? Well, it's not. They're about to retire Docs, right? So, oh wait, you have Azure for that, right? You use Teams and Office 365. Well, you're now multi-cloud, right? Did you roll your own CRM system? No, we use Salesforce.com. Well, now you're in 3 clouds, right? It goes on and on, right? So, there really is no, single cloud provider. Who do you use for, single sign-on? Okta. Now you're in 4 clouds, right? There's really no single cloud companies out there. You're using the best tools to complete the job that you need, right? And so everyone, I think, generally is multi-cloud. So start thinking of your company that way, and how are you going to manage access across all those various cloud providers?
Fantastic advice, Thomas. I especially love the one where architecture matters. Take your time to build a sound architecture. I was actually last weekend. I was at Hertz Castle in California. I don't know if you have been there or not, but the architect who built that, she was very much focused on building the foundation to protect against earthquakes. In 100 years now, there have been several earthquakes, but that foundation is rock solid because the architecture was done correctly. And whether it's life, whether it's technology, if you do the architecture right, life is good. Otherwise, it could be very miserable. And then, yeah, you're right. There's no single cloud concept anymore. You will be in multi-cloud as soon as you jump onto a new technology or product that's running somewhere else. So build for that. Even if you think you are in one cloud, architecture needs to be extendable. So you are basically giving the power to your developers, data scientists, DBAs to not get bogged down from consuming the best of breed. So really appreciate all the wisdom, Thomas. Would love to invite you to some other podcast focusing on some other areas. If somebody wants to reach out for advice, for guidance, where can they reach out?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Thomas Rawley, Rawley, or thomas.rawley@britive.com.
Fantastic. Thank you, Thomas. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.